Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a C-level executive or sitting on a board somewhere, you already know that leadership isn't just about managing people, right? It's about literally architecting the future of your company. So today, we're diving deep into the source material behind the full-range leadership model. We're going to unpack the exact mechanisms that drive those billion-dollar turnarounds, and frankly, expose the operational blind spots that cause massive conglomerates to just stagnate. Let's get right into it. Here is a quick roadmap for our analysis today. 1. The modern leadership problem. 2. Transformational power. 3. Transactional discipline. 4. The hybrid system. And finally, 5. The future of governments. Section 1. The modern leadership problem. Exploring the gap between performance and innovation. Okay, I want to start by throwing a question your way. One that's honestly keeping a lot of board members awake at night. Why is it that so many companies have incredibly strong KPIs, but remarkably weak innovation? You know the drill. You hit your quarterly targets, your operational metrics are completely green across the board, but suddenly your market share is just slowly being eaten up by more agile competitors. So what's actually going wrong here? Well, the answer lies entirely in your leadership architecture. To really diagnose this, we have to look at the foundational framework built by Bernard Bass and Bruce Avolio. When you map out the entire spectrum of leadership behaviors, you find 3 distinct tiers. On one extreme, there's laissez-faire, basically non-intervention. And no surprise, that yields a really low or even negative impact. Then in the middle, we've got transactional leadership. This is all about the exchange of benefits for performance, which gives you a medium stabilizing impact. But then on the other end, we have transformational leadership. This is the realm of pure inspiration and change, and it delivers a disproportionately massive impact. Now the big problem? Most companies are completely stuck in that middle tier. Section 2. The power of transformational leadership, the engine of innovation and change. It's fascinating how this tier is built on what academics call the 4 I's. First up, idealized influence. This is where the leader is just an unshakable role model of integrity and moral courage. Second is inspirational motivation. Think about Elon Musk at Tesla, right? He isn't just selling electric cars. His vision is accelerating the whole world's transition to sustainable energy. That kind of grand vision creates immense intrinsic motivation. Third, we have intellectual stimulation, challenging the status quo to drive pure innovation. And finally, individualized consideration, which is all about coaching and mentoring. I mean, General Electric famously became a literal CEO factory simply because they embedded this specific trait deep into their leadership pipeline. And this really hits on why transformational behaviors are absolutely crucial. Legendary organizational psychologist Edgar Schein hit the nail on the head when he said that leadership is the primary creator of organizational culture. Think about it. If your leadership is entirely focused on metrics, your culture is going to be purely transactional. Transformational leaders, on the other hand, actively mold the shared assumptions and norms that dictate how your entire workforce behaves, especially when nobody is watching. If you want a masterclass in this, just look at Microsoft under Satya Nadella. When he first took over, Microsoft was honestly plagued by aggressive internal silos, and their reputation for innovation was tanking. But Nadella deployed transformational leadership to systematically tear down those silos. He explicitly shifted the culture from this toxic know-it-all environment to a highly empathetic learn-it-all culture. And wow, did it work. That psychological safety triggered an absolute explosion in cloud-first innovation and obviously a historic surge in their market cap. Section 3, the discipline of transactional leadership, the anchor of stability and execution. Now, we all know that vision without execution is just a hallucination. That's why transactional leadership is fundamentally about performance exchange. And it operates through 3 main mechanisms. First is contingent reward, so setting crystal clear KPIs and defining the exact rewards for hitting them. Second is active management by exception, where leaders are proactively monitoring systems for errors so they can intervene early. And third is passive management by exception, where leaders really only step in after a crisis hits. Just a quick warning here, though, relying heavily on that passive reactive management is exactly what traps so many family-owned businesses in this cycle of founder dependency, where things only work when the founder's running around putting out fires. When you compare these 2 styles side by side, it's a pretty stark contrast. Transformational leadership relies on intrinsic motivation, long-term vision, and empowerment. Transactional leadership leans heavily on extrinsic motivation, short-term operational focus, and a culture of absolute compliance. Now, I want to make something super clear right now. Neither of these is bad. In fact, they are both absolutely vital. If you only have transformational leadership, you just have chaos. But if you only have transactional, you're looking at total stagnation. They serve entirely different yet completely crucial functions in the corporate anatomy. To really ground this transactional concept in reality, let's look at Toyota and Amazon. Toyota's legendary production system relies heavily on lean processes, Kaizen, and just relentless defect detection. Meanwhile, Amazon's entire logistics network is built on strict scan rates, rigid productivity metrics, and exact delivery targets. This is active management by exception and contingent reward functioning at the highest possible level. You literally cannot run a massive, complex logistical machine on inspiration alone. You absolutely require the ironclad discipline of transactional leadership. Section 4. The hybrid leadership model. Synthesizing vision with absolute discipline. Okay, so looking at the math behind the bottom line reveals this really fascinating PhD-level mediation model. It starts with transformational leadership. Now, notice that this doesn't directly create innovation. Instead, it creates organizational trust. And that trust is what lowers political infighting and boosts psychological safety, which then allows for completely uninhibited knowledge sharing across the whole company. It's actually that knowledge sharing that ultimately results in measurable innovation performance. So trust is really the invisible bridge between visionary leadership and hard financial results. A brilliant real-world example of this hybrid system in action is Vitel, the massive telecom conglomerate during their intense global expansion phase. They expertly synthesized both ends of the spectrum. On one hand, they harnessed immense transformational spirit, right? Instilling this profound sense of serving the nation and tackling seemingly impossible markets with a real entrepreneurial mindset. But and this is key, that vision was seamlessly anchored by incredibly strict military-style transactional KPIs and absolute operational discipline. That hybrid combination, it resulted in incredibly rapid yet highly controlled global scaling. Section 5. The future of governance. Scaling and adapting in the AI and ESG era. When you trace the timeline of corporate growth, a company's leadership architecture fundamentally has to evolve. Stage 1 is founder-led growth, which relies heavily on charisma and rapid decision-making. But to even survive to Stage 2, the company has to undergo institutionalization, meaning they have to implement transactional governance, solid KPIs, and real systems. This is the bottleneck where a lot of companies actually fail. But if they make it, they hit Stage 3, global expansion. And here, the leadership has to elevate all over again, bringing back transformational behaviors to manage complex cross-cultural dynamics, growing ESG demands, and continuous innovation. Simply put, you cannot use Stage 1 leadership to solve Stage 3 problems. So for the C-suite and board members tuning in, the executive takeaways from the source material are pretty clear. First off, leadership flexibility across different contexts is absolutely mandatory now. Second, you really have to lean into transformational leadership if you want to successfully drive your company's AI and ESG transitions. Third, keep that transactional leadership tight to guarantee flawless operational execution. And finally, succession planning and actually building a leadership pipeline, completely non-negotiable. Because at the end of the day, a strong culture and robust leadership architecture cannot just be copy-pasted by your competitors. They are your ultimate long-term competitive advantage. I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Over the next decade, as algorithms inevitably take over the bulk of our transactional tasks, I'm talking dashboards, predictive analytics, productivity tracking, how is AI going to fundamentally change the role of human leadership? Think about it. When the machine manages the execution, the human leader must completely master the transformation. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep asking the hard questions and keep building for the future.